In this Maya tutorial, we're going to attempt to model the back of an iPhone 11, including all of this complex camera area up here. If you've already got existing geometry, it might get in the way now, so we can select it and assign it to a new layer. To do this, I'm going to orientate my camera so I can easily select my geometry like this. You shouldn't be able to select your background image planes anyway. Once it's selected, you can go to your channel box layer editor on the side or with this button up here. And then we're going to assign this to a new layer. To do that, you can click on this far button on the right, the white diamond with the blue circle. Click on that. The layer with the largest number is the one that's just been made, not the one that's currently selected. And you can right click, and to rename it, you click on the top area up here, which mine says layer 3. It doesn't actually say rename anywhere in here. You have to click on this word and just know that that means rename. And then you're going to call this phone front. You can't type in and symbols annoyingly, but you can do like this. Okay, great. And you can hit save. I'm just going to rename my other one in a minute. So I can then hit this V here, that will go away. This is like hitting the eyeball on a layer in Photoshop, and it hides a layer like that. Super. So I can now go to my top view, and I'm going to start to think about what primitive shapes I can use to make this. So when I'm modeling geometry, I always look for any areas which have to have perfect circles or half part circles, like the corners of this phone or these camera bits here. Those are the most difficult things to model manually, and if you get them ever so slightly wrong, they look really weird, especially with the reflections, and you know that it's not a perfect circle and looks amateurish. So it's always good to start off with these shapes in mind and then model everything else afterwards. So I'm going to go to create a pipe for this shape here. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitives, and I'm going to add this to my shelf. Command or Control Shift pipe. You then have a pipe. I'm going to middle click with my mouse to drag that over by my other primitive shapes over here. I also had interactive creation on when I clicked on the pipe, which means when I create this pipes from my shelf, they will also have interactive creation on. So I'll go to this pipe shape here. I'll move my mouse to sort of the middle of the phone camera bit here, as close to the middle as I can get, and I'll drag out a pipe shape. Now, annoyingly, it doesn't drag out the middle of the pipe relative to the size of it. It just is its own size, no matter how big the pipe is. I think that's a very bad design in Maya, but hey-ho. So I'm just going to drag it out like this, so I can see a part of the middle appearing, just so I know it is a pipe, not a cylinder. Then let go. We'll change it in a minute. Then your mouse will change to this icon, and it's saying you have to drag up the set height. You really do have to do this. You have to spacebar to your 3D view. Do not try to hit F, or you'll zoom out into outer space, because it's another glitch that Maya has. You can't hit F until your geometry is 3Dified, and then you can hit F. Oh no, you still can't. I think you have to click on it afterwards like this, so it goes like a different shade of green. Then you can hit F to focus on it just fine. I also seem to have lost the middle of the shape there. Now to bring that back and to sort out the shape of this pipe, if I spacebar to my top view, go to my attribute editor over here, and I'm going to go to my polypipe 2 tab, or yours might be called polypipe 1. But I'm going to go to the thickness here. You don't really get a lot of maneuverability in here, so if you hold Control on the keyboard, you can actually adjust this ever so slightly more with more accuracy, but really not much. So you might just have to type in your own numbers or something if you really want to. So I might just do like 0.2, and then I can scale the whole thing down like this. Just get it roughly that size, it's fine. And then you can scale it on down like that. I want to make this pipe now flat, so I'm going to go to my 3D view. I'm going to kind of lower my camera down like this and do like a little selection box over the lower parts of this shape and hit delete. And then you're just left with that top bit there. Now go to object mode. You'll see your pivot isn't in the middle of this shape, which might cause problems later. So let's do center pivot on that. That's modify center pivot. And then we've got this shape. Now we can go to edge mode. Double click on the outside edge, spacebar to your top view, and now you can do R for resize and resize the edge so it kind of fits like that. Then go to object mode. I'm then going to do W and move this kind of roughly about, maybe make the whole thing a little bit smaller like that. Once this one's pretty much perfect, you can then do Control D for duplicate, move it vertically with the arrows down there. Control D for duplicate again. This time I'm going to use this green plane to move at any angle, but it stays on the same axis. And then I'm also going to do Command D or Control D and move it up for this smaller one up here. Don't worry about the fact that there isn't a sort of extruded piece of metal outside of here. It's all going to work later on. Great, we now need to combine these shapes together so we can start to bridge them up. So I'm going to hold Shift and select all of these shapes. I'm then going to do Combine, which is Mesh Combine, or that button on your shelf. I'm going to spacebar to my 3D view to check that these are all at the same level. If for some reason they're not, let's just pretend that when you resized it, it went down because your pivot wasn't centered. You can drag select all of the faces that make your geometry up, hit R for resize, and drag the green cube down towards the middle. If you'd followed my previous steps, you shouldn't have had to do that. Now we can start to connect them up. I'm going to go to my top view for this. That's spacebar, top view. I'm going to start off by connecting the outermost edges first. So this can be a bit of a pickle. So I'm going to select this edge here, for example, and then hold shift and select this edge over here and go to bridge. That's edit mesh bridge if it's not on your shelf already. Now what you got to do here is make sure you don't accidentally select edges that will cause the faces to invert. For example, if I was to click on this edge here but join it up to, let's say, this edge here, when I hit bridge, the face is going to kind of turn inside out halfway through, and this is just insane. It will never work, and it will break the geometry and everything's ruined. So just try and choose edges that don't cause them to turn inside out. So it's this one to this one, for example. It didn't work either. So that one to that one, that's fine. I can see that this face has like a normal middle part to it, so that's good. I'm just going to do the outer boundaries, almost like I'm kind of drawing an outline around these. Ignore the middle ones for now. Ignore the ones on the inside for now. Just focus on the outermost ones that you can possibly do. So that face is probably too small, and if I was to later on try and merge things, that might cause problems. So I'm just going to try that one. That was still too small over there, so if I try that one, that's better. As long as you can see the middle main area of the face, you'll be fine. That one's too short on that side. That's much better. And this one to that one, that should be pretty simple. So you should end up now with something that looks like this. You've sort of drawn some faces around the edge over here. Now we need to fill up this area in the middle. To do that, I'm going to do edge and double click on any of these inside edges like this. You see it then kind of selects a big old loop of edges on the inside like that. And then you can go to fill hole, which is under mesh, fill hole. Now this is kind of a dangerous thing to do if you want to have perfect geometry. So if you do mesh fill hole, and let's spacebar to our 3D view so you can see the shape that we've made. So we've actually made quite a complex shape with holes in it like this. Some of you might be getting trypophobia vibes from this, but if I go to try and smooth this out, so the big test to see if your geometry is professional or not, or sellable or not, or able to be put into a game or not, if you just simply hit 3 on the keyboard and it looks good, you'll probably be okay. If you hit 3 on the keyboard and this happens, you cannot sell this, you cannot put it into a game, it will never work. So this is happening here because the face in the middle has got more than 4 sides. It's probably got like 55 or something. So if I hit 3, you can see what horrible things are happening because this has not got quads. So it's a similar problem as we get with the Boolean tool. So if I hit 1 to come out of that horrible mode, we can try and fix this. The first thing we're going to do is triangulate this because triangles are better than faces with more than 4 sides. So I'm going to go to mesh, triangulate, and it does actually do a pretty good job of triangulating that in quite a neat way. The only problem with triangles is that you can't put edge loops through them. Let's say later on we had to, for some reason, break this phone in a film or something, or bend it. You can't put edge loops through in order to bend the geometry, and this is as high poly as these triangles can ever really get, and it could cause problems if you wanted to do further changes to the geometry. So let's turn these triangles into quads, 4-sided shapes. To do that, you can go to mesh, and there is a button called quadrangulate. Now, by default, this doesn't actually work. I've never even seen this work at all until very, very recently. In fact, yesterday when I was trying to just Google it if this would work. So to make this button work, if you go to the options box for quadrangulate, you can see some options. All these boxes, will be ticked by default. We need to untick all of them. Just untick all of them, and then you can hit quadrangulate. And that's the only way I can ever get this button to work. So untick all those options, and it turns as many of the triangles as possible into 4-sided shapes. There's obviously not the correct amount of edges. So for example, there's far too many edges over here to connect to what it has. So it has made triangles, but where possible, it's done quads. This is good. So we can now work on connecting this and kind of stitching it to the back of our phone. Before we do that, we need to complete the outside edge of this, and this can also cause problems or be a bit of a pickle. So I'm going to duplicate this geometry just because I want to kind of extract this piece of pipe here. So I did Command D, W for move, just going to randomly move it over here for a minute, and I'm just going to temporarily turn off my X-ray shading so this is clearer. I'm going to go to face mode. I want to double click and select this loop of faces here, this ring of faces. I'm going to hold shift now, drag select a box over here, and then hit delete so that I've only got this set of faces. If I go back to object mode, I'm just going to hit CP for center pivot, and I'm just going to put my X-ray shading back on, I guess, and then I'm going to move this shape over to here. Sorry, if X-ray shading isn't doing it for you, you can just go to your attribute editor, go to Lambert 1 and just say the Lambert 1 to be darker and more transparent just for now, and it's easier. Anyway, now we can do R for resize, and what we're aiming for really, move that down there, then R for resize, we're aiming for the inside of this pipe to match the edge of this sort of bulged bit at the back of the phone. Then go to face mode and kind of delete this half and that lower half there. So you're just left with this. Then if I do W for move, you can do Control D for duplicate. Let's move it down to the bottom. If you do E for rotate, you can see that actually the pivot is still in the middle from when it was a circle, which is super useful. So I'm going to hold J on the keyboard to rotate this by 15-degree increments, so it's exactly like that. W for move, and kind of line up the edge like this. Same over here. Command D, sorry, Control D, E for rotate, hold J, spin it around over here, W for move. And even though you can't see this because it's covered up by the image, I can kind of line it up and just kind of guesstimate that that's probably fine. And then do Command D again, move it up to the top, E for rotate, hold down J whilst rotating it like that. And you've then got your 4 outside parts done like that. Might just move that down a bit to there. I'm just looking at where this edge is there. Great. Now we can join these 4 together. So that's holding shift. I'm going to join these 4 together. And while we're there, we're also going to join the crazy shape here as well. So I'm holding shift to select all these pieces, and I'm going to hit combine. That's mesh combine if you don't have it on your shelf. We can now bridge these edges together, these easy ones. So get these 2 opposite edges. That was edge mode. Shift select the opposite 2 edges, hit bridge. Do the same with these 2. That's bridge. I'm hitting G on the keyboard, so G is repeat the last command, which was bridge, and I'm bridging all these together quickly like that. Now we've got to fill in this sort of donut shape. We can't immediately, unfortunately, go to mesh fill hole because it will sort of cover up all the other holes and it will just get all sort of weird and it just won't work. So we can't do that. So what I am going to do is start to manually bridge faces together that I know really should be opposite. So I can see actually that this side over here is really easy. I can click from here, for example. I can click these 2, and all the way up to these 2. So if I now go from here to here, and from here to here, and hit bridge, they're going to work fine. Now, when bridging lots of edges at the same time, you do need to keep an eye on your poly count. So if I just temporarily turn off my image planes like this, you'll see I've got my poly count up here. To see a poly count, you can go to display, heads up display, and poly count. I can add that to my shelf as well. That's display, heads up display. I'm holding Control Shift. I'm going to add poly count to my shelf. So I can toggle that on and off. So if I go to edge mode, you can see if I click on one edge, it says I've got one edge selected there. If I double click, so if I go from here to here, for example, it says I've got 13 edges. If I go on the inside from here to here, I've got 15 edges or 16 edges. So I'm going to focus on the ones that I really think should be opposite first, and like this one and this one, for example, and I'll join these up like this. So I'm just going to hit G to repeat command, and I'm also expecting these guys as well. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess, and then I can bridge those together like that. I'm now left with these guys here, which I somehow need to join up. So we need to make sure that they have an equal number of faces on the other side. So if I get these 2, I cannot bridge these 2 to this one here. I have to do this. If I get my edge loop tool, I can create another, whoops, if I double click on my edge loop tool, make sure it's set to relative, I can drag an edge loop like this here, quit the edge loop tool with Q, or by clicking on your mouse icon, then you can bridge these 2 together like that. So you can only bridge opposite edges that have equal amounts. So I'm going to bridge that one to there, bridge, and I can see here that I want to add 2 edge loops. So I'll just drag in 2 edge loops, one there, and then I can bridge these together like this. So I can see up here there's 6, obviously 3 and 3 on each side, and I know that that's going to bridge nicely. Same with up here, bridge. It does take quite a lot of experience to create geometry like this. You kind of have to plan ahead and know what you're doing, but eventually you will just get it on. The next step is to join this up with the back of our phone and stitch it into it. So I'm going to go back to my channel box layer editor and turn back on my phone here. So I'm turning that back on. I'm now going to get the screen of the phone, duplicate that, Control D, move it to the left out of the way. I'm then going to move this over the top like this, whoops, and so just it's roughly sitting on top. I could spacebar to my side view and kind of just, obviously I'm doing this upside down, but I'm going to see how thick that area is there and just kind of say, right, it's about probably that high up. If it was inverted, I can always change it later. So it's sitting above the phone like that. If I turn on my occlusion shadows there, it's a bit clearer. So to stitch this on, I'm going to click on the main screen of the phone and I'm going to go to face mode, click on the main face in the middle here, and I want to grow the selection so it selects all of these faces as well, but not these ones. To grow your selection, almost like a virus, you can do Shift and then on the keyboard hit your full stop. You'll notice there's like a forward arrow on there, which is useful because it's like for grow selection. Likewise, the comma or left arrow is decrease the selection. So that's quite a good trick. So anyway, so you've hit that one. You can now hit delete. That was a really handy way of deleting these top faces here. So next I want to join up my geometry here with the phone. Now I've still got my X-ray shader on this geometry here, so the transparent material on it. So I'm going to click on my geometry up here and shift select what was once the screen of the phone and do right click and hold and then go all the way down to assign existing material. I'm going to choose, I happen to call it chrome, but whatever the material is for this piece, also assigned to both of these so you can see them properly. I'm going to move this down lower again into position. And now I'm going to go to edge mode and double click on the outside edges of the camera section bit here. I need to kind of move these down to there. If I spacebar to my side view, I can see, yeah, it's about right. It's a little bit too thick. I can change it later, I suppose. But you want to move these down so that they're exactly in line with the top edge of the phone here. If you hold V on the keyboard, you can snap to vertex. So what that does, if you hold V and use your arrows, it will snap to the nearest set of vertices. It's not really doing it in the 3D view, but in the side view, if you just hold V on the keyboard, use the arrow, and it kind of snaps down to this one here. It's actually not, it's not doing it now, but I can just do it manually to there. It'll be fine. And then we're going to go back to object mode. I'm going to shift select the outer edge of the phone and combine these together to enable us to bridge. We can't bridge anything that isn't combined. I can see here there's going to be a bit of a problem later on when I try and join up this sort of camera shape here. I'm going to have to get this corner, and you can see it's actually slightly misaligned anyway, but I'm going to go and select these 5 edges here and just cheat and move them down a bit so that this top edge is parallel to there. In my top view it's gone black for whatever reason, but if I just drag these like that, so you want to leave a little bit of space between here and here. If you don't have any space or your outer edge here is slightly too large, you can just double click on it and just resize it in a bit so you have a bit more space to breathe like that, and that should be fine. So we're really looking at the space between here and the space over there. Make sure there's some kind of space to join up. Anyway, so go to edge mode. Let's join up some edges. So I'm going to focus on the corners first, and you can see that the geometry in here has far more sides than the geometry out here. I really should have made these cylinders out of 12-sided instead of 20-sided, but I actually forgot, so this actually made this bit quite difficult, but I suppose it's a good challenge to see. So select these two opposite edges. I'll start bridging these up and see how far I can go before things go wrong. And I need to insert edge loops. I can get to about there, and this face will then join up with this massive face over here. So I'm now going to start putting in edge loops. The most important thing when adding edge loops to your geometry to join up, for the sole purpose of joining up bridges, is that you never ever put them in curved or cornered areas up here. You have to leave these circular areas as perfect circles. You must never add an edge loop like this, because when you hit 3 and smooth it, you'll notice you get these sort of horrible lumpy corners, so just don't do that. But you can insert them on the straight edges. So I'm just going to insert an edge sort of here. You can, if your edge is at an angle and it's annoying you, you can hit R for resize to straighten that out. And now you've got a nice area to go between there and hit bridge. And up here now I'm going to start to add some more edge loops. So I'm going to put an edge loop in here, and you can bridge that one up. And same over here as well. I'll bridge these up. So I'm doing this quite slowly because I'm worrying about the bottom ones. So let's focus on joining this curved corner up to this curved corner. I know there's more edges over here than there are over there, but let's see how far we go. So this one and that one sort of match. That makes sense. And I can probably go from there. That's 1, 2, 1, 2, and maybe that one to that one. I was going to go with those 3 for now and hit bridge. And then I can do that last one there like that, and that's fine. Let's focus on the left hand side down here. So I'm going to go from this edge to this large edge and hit bridge, and then 1, 2, 3 for 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to get that fourth one there to that fourth one there and hit bridge, and that's quite neat. And I'll go to this corner as well, this 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way down to 1, 2, 3, 4 and hit bridge. And now we're left with some edge loops that we can simply add to the outside to make it match. So if I go here, if I double click along there, I've got 4 faces, so I need to add 3 edge loops to this side so that there can now be 4 faces where there was only 1 before. So I can just randomly click over here if I want 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And down here you can see there's only 1 edge loop that I need to add to the bottom side like that. I can bridge those up like that. So I can double click along here, then double click from there to there and hit bridge. Oh, I seem to have too many on one side, sorry, so I'm not going to do this manually. So I'm going to bridge these up, that one to that one, that one to that one. I'm going to hit G for repeat command, that one to that one, G for repeat command, and that one to, oops, so I added too many. So I can simply go to my edges and delete this one. I put 1 in too many. So I can double click and you do shift, right click, delete edge. You have to do shift right click to delete edges or it leaves the vertices behind, and you can join these up to there. Now I would usually just simply plonk a shape like this on top of geometry, but I think Apple have in fact manufactured this out of one continuous piece of metal. So if you were to hit 3 on the keyboard and if I turn off my wireframe, the back of the phone is actually sort of almost looks kind of molded and sculpted like this. It's clearer actually if you bevel these quick. So if you just go to edge mode and double click on your edges like this, you can then bevel them. You saw then when I hit 3 it looked a little bit blobby, a little bit too smooth, but when you go to bevel you'll see it tightens up these edges. So you can do bevel or edit mesh, bevel, and keep the fraction fairly small. 0.5 here actually works really well. I can even increase the segment to 2 if I really wanted, but I won't. Once you've added the bevel and you hit 3, you'll then see really why we did this. It looks beautiful with the chrome material on here, and you can see it looks like it's been sculpted or molded out of one continuous piece of metal as opposed to having another piece of metal stuck onto it. So this is why we went to all the effort to bridge all of these things together like this. And you can still see that these holes are perfectly smooth because of the way that we've constructed the geometry like this. So this is now a professionally modeled piece of geometry. We now want to add all the camera bits in the middle. This is a lot easier. I'm going to spacebar to the top view. I'm going to turn on my X-ray shading. I'm also going to turn on my image planes. I'm going to line up this part of the phone here like that. So it seems to be a weird face, I'll just delete that one. Just line that up as accurately as you can. If you're having problems lining it up accurately, you can move the pivot by hitting insert on the keyboard, or I think you can hit D, hit D for delta on the keyboard, and you can move this move pivot and then tap D again to toggle it out a bit, and then you can move, let's say, from this very detailed area, and it's slightly easier. So just line this up, and now we're going to create these camera bits. To do that, we're going to use a pipe shape. I might as well use the pipe shapes that already exist here instead of creating a brand new one and worrying about the whole 3D bit. So I'm going to do Control D for duplicate. If I just temporarily move it back out of the way, I suppose, go to face mode, select this ring of faces like that we want to keep. I'm going to zoom right out, hold shift, delete everything else. So I've immediately got a piece of geometry in the right place. I'm going to do CP for center pivot and move it back there. And then I'm going to do R for resize. I'm going to resize it down until the edge of the sort of dark part of the camera lens there. And just kind of line it up as best as I can. In fact, it's probably going to be easier if we just resize it right towards the proper glassy bit in the middle like that. And then go to edge mode, double click on the outside edge here, and resize this to there so that that sits inside there. If I go to my 3D view, I'm going to hit F to focus on the selected edges. We've got this. I am going to sink it inside there. I've got my occlusion on here, which is helping me see the detail. If you're having trouble seeing what's going on, you can always turn on your default materials, but I'm happy with this. So if I go in here, I'm going to add edge loops where you can see there's different sort of heights of stuff. Or I'm going to go to my edge loop tool here and just say I want an edge loop there. And I think there's like another little loop in the middle. I'll spacebar back to my 3D view, go to face mode, select these faces here, and then I can invert my selection like this. So I've got all of these guys selected. I'm then going to extrude them all up like this. Find the blue arrow and pull them up just a little bit. And then I'm going to shift, double click around there and extrude these guys up as well. You can also extrude by holding shift while moving your move tool like that. And you end up with this shape. I'm now going to assign a new material to this so I can see it clearer. Now right click, assign new material, go to Arnold Shader, AI Standard Surface. I'll find a tab called AI Standard Surface, but for me it's Standard Surface 6. If you have too many tabs and you can't see what's going on, you can delete a history, which has somewhat disappeared from my shelf, but try and find it. That's edited, deleted by type history or delete history. And then you can go to presets and you want to use, let's just use rubber for now and hit replace. Change the color to black. You can now move this down inside there. Good. Now we're going to bevel the edges here. So I might get this guy as well and just extrude that down quite far. That'll do. I'm going to bevel all of these 90-degree corner edges, even the ones at the bottom, before I duplicate this. And I'm going to keep the fraction quite small, like that. And if you were to hit 3 at some point, you'll see how just nice that looks. So I'm going to hit 1. And then it's now time to add the metallic sort of donut, shiny donut shape here. To do that, spacebar to your top view again. I'm going to, again, duplicate the geometry, move it over there. I really should have kept these original shapes. And shift, double click around there. I want to keep that one, but shift, select everything else. I don't want that. Put that back where it came from, like this. And move it up. I'm now going to go to face mode, double click on all the faces at once and extrude all the faces. I can do W for move if I want, and I got like a nice donut shape like this, which I can then intersect through the geometry. So I'm going to go to object mode. Before I intersect it through, I am going to delete the faces at the bottom because I know they're there. It's just good practice to delete faces that you can't or will never see. And I can intersect that into the geometry like this. I can see there's ever so slightly a bit of this part of the geometry phasing through it, so I'll just resize it in a bit to hide that. This definitely needs a bevel. I'm going to go double click on this edge and this edge. I'll check the size of the bevel in my top view. I'll bevel that one, not quite that big, maybe like that, and maybe increase the segments to 2 like that. When you hit 3, it will look absolutely fine after you've beveled it. I'm just going to spacebar to my side view now and see how far out this goes. It's certainly not that far. In fact, it looks a bit more rounded, but it'll be fine. So move that down into the geometry like that. We are almost done. We just need to add a piece of glass over the top and a piece of domed glass down there. Let's do the domed glass first. To create domed or rounded glass like on a lens, you'd go to create, polygon primitives, and let's add a sphere to our shelf. If you haven't already done so, I'll move that over there with middle click. And I'll click on my spacebar, go to my top view, and create a sphere as centrally as possible to that. W for move to that, and move the sphere up to there. I'm actually going to resize the sphere a lot bigger, just to avoid confusion. My sphere I've made my Lambert 1 material transparent. I'll just turn that off for a minute. And if I move my sphere, maybe actually resize it so it's quite big, to choose how much sort of curvature we get. That's probably about the right amount. I'm going to go to face mode, and I'm going to shift select a loop of faces like this. so I can see what ones I want to keep. If I hit 4 on the keyboard, I can see underneath or see the rest of the sphere. If I shift double click beneath it like this, hit delete, you can then double click on what you don't want and hit delete, which is another way of doing it. Or you could just kind of drag select the bottom bit and hit delete, whatever you want to do. But I find this much easier to do. 5, 6, 7, and we can assign a glass material to this. So let's right click, assign new material. I always assign materials before I duplicate to save time. I'm going to assign an Arnold shader, standard surface. I'm going to call this one glass. I'm going to call it glass rainbow. I noticed in the reference image here, the glass looked kind of rainbowy, and there's actually a preset for bubble that I'm going to use for this one. No one's going to know that it's not glass. And then last but not least, I need to just create a flat piece of glass for the top here. The easiest way to do that, let's say, would be to duplicate this rubber shape. Select the faces over here, hold shift, drag select everything else, hit delete, go to edge mode, double click on these ones in the middle, shift select two opposing edges like that, hit bridge, and then do right click, assign another new material, and I'm going to call this one Arnold shader, standard surface. I'm going to rename this one to glass clear and do presets glass replace, W for move, bring it down there. If you ever have trouble seeing your glass once you deselected it, you can click on your default materials button here and you'll see exactly what's going on. So you've got that. Right, we're now ready to duplicate this geometry to these other holes. So spacebar to your top view. I'm going to turn my X-ray off for a moment and turn my lights on. So I'm going to drag select kind of just randomly all of this stuff here. In fact, I'll just turn my lights off. That's better. So there we go. So if I just kind of drag select this, I'm going to say I selected too much, but if I hold shift, I can deselect this main geometry, leaving just these guys. I'm actually going to group these together now because I want to always be able to reselect them all. To group geometry, do Command G for group. When you group, the pivot goes towards the middle of the scene for no reason at all, which is really annoying. So do CP for center pivot, that goes there. I'm going to turn on my X-ray shading again, duplicate this grouped camera down to there. If you happen to accidentally deselect a part of your group and click on it again, you can simply hit the up arrow on your keyboard and you will select it again. And pop that one over there like that. And then for the glass bits, you could probably just duplicate that. So I now need to go to these holes here, go to edge mode and do extrude downwards. So I'm going to hit extrude, or I'm just going to hold shift and just move those down while holding shift like that. And I'm going to do double click and hold shift while moving them down like that. Then I can double click on this edge, double click on this edge, hit bevel, quite a small bevel like that. And then I can duplicate my piece of glass, do that button there, do Command D, and then pop that in there. It's obviously far too large, you can resize it down. Super. We now need to sort of have some blackness behind all of these. So to do that, I'm going to go to my top view and simply drag out a flat plane shape. I'm just going to add that to my shelf. So do create polygon primitives. I want a plane. I'm going to add that to my primitive shapes over here and simply drag out a square that is large enough to cover the bottom of all of these camera bits. In my 3D view, I'm just going to kind of put it roughly there. That will do. Yeah, as long as it's kind of not too far down, because it needs to be in the middle of your phone later on. In fact, I might just move it up a bit. So it really needs to be sort of about there. That'll do. And then with this material, I'm actually going to make it jet black. So this material is now behind some glass, as you can see here. And if I try and click on it, I'm going to click on the glass by mistake, like this. Whoops. Command Z. So what you can do, if you've got geometry selected, some backface culling off. If you've got geometry selected and you really want to just see it on its own, you can just hit this button here, which is isolate selected, and it hides everything else. Obviously, click on it again to bring it all back. It's going to hide everything else. Now I can right click on it. I can do assign new material. This time I'm going to assign a surface shader, which is just going to be pure black. And no matter how much light you add to it, it'll always be jet black, which is super handy for like the inside of objects and stuff. Now I'm done. I'm going to click on this, and now the inside of these areas are all pure black. It looks a bit fake at the moment, but later on, once you've got all the camera glass and stuff, it will work. Oh, that's obviously the flash there. So to make that the flash, I'll duplicate this glass, move it down a bit, isolate, select that glass, so I can right click, assign another new material for it, and I'm going to call this one camera flash, and I'm just going to put a preset of plastic on there for now, and just make it kind of yellow, pure white yellow, and also the subsurface to the same. Your color picker probably won't work if you're on a Mac at school because of some weird new security preferences that Apple have introduced. Anyway, I'll turn that back off so we can see everything else like that. So that's pretty good. Now let's combine all of this geometry together now. So I'm going to drag select all of these and hit, oh, hang on, not this one, but just all that stuff. And then I can hit combine. That's now the back of our phone done. So I can now sort of spin it around by holding down J and put it underneath. But to just bask in the beauty of your work, you can hit, when you hit 3 on the keyboard, you can see it's all smoothed out and it all looks really nice. And because of all that time we put into creating quad geometry, it is perfect. And then the phone is pretty much done. All you have to do is put some graphics onto the screen and put screws on the bottom.